In the forbidden silence of Vault 9, Queen Camilla slid the late Queen's priceless Starlight Tiara into a leather satchel. She thought she was utterly alone, but from the shadows, a young female guard, Sergeant Evelyn Reed, watched every move. She wasn't supposed to be there, but what she did next would shake the monarchy to its core. Before I show you exactly what happened inside that chamber, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The late autumn light at the Citadel has a way of making you forget which century you're in. The light slanted through the ancient yew trees, painting the fortress's gray stone in shades of honey and amber, a sight that made the Citadel feel less like a royal residence and more like a place where time itself was kept under guard. Most evenings, after the last tourist had departed and the ceremonial duties were done, a profound quiet would settle over the grounds, a stillness that suggested nothing had changed for 1,000 years. Sergeant Evelyn Reed knew better. At 30, she was younger than most in her position, and she lacked the grizzled combat record of her male counterparts. Her authority came not from the battlefield, but from the library. She'd graduated top of her class from Sandhurst with a first in history, and her understanding of the Citadel wasn't just tactical, it was academic. She knew its secret passages, its architectural ghosts, and most importantly, the intricate web of protocols and laws that were the monarchy's true foundation. Standing guard for Evelyn wasn't just about watching for threats. It was about understanding the history she was protecting. Tonight, she was in the archival wing, a section of the Citadel rarely seen by the public, and a place she was not officially scheduled to be. An instinct, honed by years of academic discipline, had drawn her here. Earlier that day, while reviewing digital logs, a tedious task most guards overlooked, she had noticed a minor, almost insignificant anomaly. A low-level data query on the original 17th century schematics for Vault Chamber 9, originating from a terminal assigned to a junior aide who had been quietly dismissed weeks ago. It was a whisper, a digital breadcrumb, but to Evelyn, it was a glaring error in the pattern of history. Vault 9 had been sealed by personal decree of the late Queen Elizabeth II 2 years prior, its contents designated as part of the Sovereign Legacy Act, untouchable, inalienable, and beyond the reach of any single individual. The memory was as sharp as cut glass. 3 years before the Queen's passing, Evelyn, then just a corporal, had been summoned to the monarch's private study. It was a small, unassuming room, filled with books and the scent of old paper and roses from the garden below. The Queen stood by the window, not in royal regalia, but in simple tweed. "Corporal Reed," she had said, her voice clear and steady. "You understand the difference between possession and stewardship, do you not?" Evelyn had simply nodded. The Queen then walked to an old oak desk and retrieved 2 items. The first was an aged iron key, heavy and ornate. The second was a deep blue vellum envelope, sealed with the royal cipher in crimson wax. "There are items within this citadel," the Queen had continued, her gaze fixed on Evelyn, "that represent not the wealth of the crown, but its soul. They are our history, our promise to the nation. They are never to be treated as personal effects." She had handed the sealed envelope to Evelyn. "This key opens Vault 9. There are only 2 others. One will be buried with me. The other is locked away. No one should possess a third. If anyone, regardless of rank, ever attempts to claim the contents of that vault as a private inheritance, you have my authority, my solemn command to intervene. This envelope contains the legal basis for that command. Do not open it unless you must. You are not just guarding a door, child. You are guarding our legacy." Evelyn had never opened the envelope. It remained in a lockbox with her service medals, a sacred trust. Until tonight, the soft, purposeful click of expensive heels on stone echoed down the corridor, pulling her from her memory. She flattened herself into an alcove, her modern uniform stark against the ancient stone. In the reflection of a long, gilded mirror, she saw them. Queen Camilla, her face a mask of composed determination, and a pale, nervous aide trailing in her wake. They were walking directly toward Vault 9, and in her hand, Camilla held a key that was an identical twin to the one the late Queen had shown her. The cold, heavy feeling in Evelyn's gut wasn't just suspicion. It was the chilling certainty that she was about to witness the desecration of a legacy she had sworn to protect. Evelyn moved with a silence she had perfected, her soft-soled boots making no sound on the flagstones. She knew this wing better than the architects who had designed its modern security overlays. She knew the blind spots in the camera systems, the precise floorboards that didn't creak, the forgotten servant passages that ran parallel to the main corridors. While Camilla walked the path of privilege, Evelyn moved through the arteries of history, a ghost in the machine of the Citadel. She reached the junction leading to Vault 9 moments before Camilla and her aide, concealing herself behind a heavy tapestry depicting a medieval hunt. From her vantage point, she watched as Camilla approached the vault's massive oak door. There was a modern biometric panel next to it, dark and dormant. Camilla ignored it completely. Instead, she inserted the aged iron key into the ancient, oversized lock. With a heavy, grating sound that echoed with finality, the tumblers turned. As the door swung inward, the security panel beside it flickered to life. A single word glowed in an amber light. Accessed. But below it, where a digital log of the user's name, authorization code, and biometric data should have appeared, there was only a string of empty dashes. It was a manual override, a ghost entry that left no digital footprint. Someone hadn't just opened a door. They had bypassed 2 centuries of security evolution. This confirmed Evelyn's deepest fears. This wasn't a spontaneous act. It was a carefully planned intrusion, enabled by someone with an intimate knowledge of the Citadel's old and new systems. She waited until they were inside before creeping forward. The heavy door had been left slightly ajar. Pressing her ear against the cold, carved wood, she could hear their hushed voices, sharp and clear in the stone-walled silence. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Your Majesty?" The aide's voice trembled. "Don't be a fool." Camilla's reply was clipped and dismissive. "Charles has been delaying this for months. Half these pieces should have been transferred to my personal collection the day he took the throne. He is too sentimental." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Transferred? According to what authority? But if we are discovered..." The aide stammered. "Who is going to discover anything?" Camilla scoffed. "This vault has been sealed since the funeral. No one comes here. I'm not stealing. I'm simply claiming what was personally promised to me. What is already mine?" Evelyn eased away from the door and moved to the side, where she knew a small, concealed Judas window, a peephole for guards of old, was hidden behind a loose stone. Shifting it silently, she peered inside. The sight was worse than she had imagined. This was not a claim. It was a raid. The interior of the vault was a small, climate-controlled chamber lined with velvet. 3 reinforced glass display cases stood open and empty. On a central granite table sat a large, supple leather satchel, already bulging. As Evelyn watched, Camilla, with the focused air of a connoisseur, lifted a breathtaking diamond tiara from its stand. The Starlight Tiara. Its hundreds of diamonds caught the single security light, fracturing it into 1,000 tiny rainbows, a captured constellation. She examined it for a moment, a flicker of triumphant ownership in her eyes, before carefully placing it into the bag. "The Regent's emerald brooch goes in the separate pouch," she instructed her aide, gesturing to a smaller velvet bag. "And be exceptionally careful with it." The brooch was a legendary piece, a massive emerald surrounded by diamonds, a direct link to a former dynasty. And it was the very piece specifically mentioned by name in the late Queen's sealed letter. This was a calculated, systematic looting of the monarchy's soul, piece by priceless piece. Evelyn knew she couldn't wait for backup. She couldn't wait for protocol. The late Queen's command echoed in her mind. "You have my authority to intervene." Taking a single, steadying breath, she stepped back from the wall, her duty clear. She was the last line of defense. Evelyn didn't storm the room. She simply stepped into the doorway, her figure silhouetted against the dim corridor light. Her presence was quiet, yet it fell into the room with the weight of an accusation. "Your Majesty?" Her voice was calm, professional, and utterly unwavering. It cut through the hushed atmosphere like a surgeon's scalpel. Camilla spun around, not with the shock of being caught, but with the pure, undiluted annoyance of a superior being interrupted by a servant. Her aide froze, his face a portrait of sheer panic. Authorization? Camilla's tone was cold, practiced. For what? For taking a walk in my own home. For accessing protected royal collection items, ma'am. Evelyn replied, taking one deliberate step into the room. Her eyes didn't flicker from Camilla's. Vault Chamber 9 is sealed under the Sovereign Legacy Act. May I see your authorization? Camilla's expression hardened, calculation flickering behind her eyes. These belong to my husband's mother, she said, each word a carefully placed stone. Now, they belong to me. That is all the authorization I require. With respect, ma'am, Evelyn said, her voice remaining level. That is not how succession law works. These items are registered as Class A protected heritage assets. They cannot be removed without verified documentation from both the Crown and the Royal Collection Trust. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the vault's climate control. Documentation? Camilla repeated the word as if it were an insult. She gave a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. You think the Queen filed paperwork every time she gave me a piece of jewelry? She told me, personally, that these were mine to keep. Would you deny her final wishes for the sake of your bureaucracy? I would uphold them, ma'am. Evelyn's reply was swift and certain, exactly as she intended. She took another step forward, placing herself subtly between Camilla and the exit. I must ask you to return what you've taken and step away from the display. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Camilla drew herself up to her full height, her chin raised in that particular way of those who have never been told no. Are you giving me an order, Sergeant? The words were soft, but they dripped with venom. I'm enforcing protocol, ma'am. The same protocol that has protected the Crown's legacy for centuries. It was then that the terrified aide made his fatal error. Perhaps we should contact Sir Alistair, Your Majesty, he whispered urgently. He could clarify the arrangement. Camilla shot him a look of pure fury. Be silent, she hissed. But it was too late. Evelyn's mind seized the name. Sir Alistair Finch. The Queen's former private secretary. A man who had been quietly and unceremoniously dismissed from royal service 3 months after the funeral for financial indiscretions. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This was an inside job. Finch must have provided the key and the override codes. Sir Alistair Finch provided you with access? Evelyn asked quietly. Camilla's face went white with rage. I never said that. Your aide did, ma'am. Camilla turned on the young man with a ferocity that could have melted steel. Get out, she snarled. Now! The aide practically fled from the room, leaving the two women alone. This is over, Camilla said, clutching the satchel to her body like a shield. You can take this up with the palace tomorrow. She made a determined move toward the door. Evelyn didn't move to physically block her. She didn't have to. She simply raised her right cuff, her movements calm and economical, and pressed the small, discreet button sewn into the fabric. A soft, almost inaudible beep echoed in the vault. It was the emergency protocol for a level 2 security breach. Camilla froze mid-stride. What did you just do? She whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. I have reported an unauthorized removal of heritage assets, ma'am. Evelyn replied, her gaze steady. The king will be notified immediately. Camilla's face, a moment ago filled with rage, was now a mask of cold fury and dawning horror. You have just destroyed your career, she said through gritted teeth. No, ma'am. Evelyn corrected her gently. I have just protected the crown from being destroyed. And from the far end of the corridor came the unmistakable sound of multiple, disciplined footsteps approaching at speed. The footsteps were heavy, purposeful, and multiplying. The first to arrive was Inspector Harris, head of the Citadel's internal security, a formidable woman whose expression was already grim. Behind her were 2 other officers, followed by the frantic-looking archivist, Leo Vance, and a man Evelyn recognized as Dr. Eris Thorne, the senior curator for the Royal Collection Trust, who was clutching a tablet like a lifeline. Their eyes took in the scene in an instant. The open vault, the empty displays, the satchel in Camilla's hand, and Evelyn standing like a statue at her post. "Sergeant Reed," Inspector Harris said, her voice crisp. "We received a Level 2 alert. Unauthorized heritage access." Dr. Thorne was already swiping frantically at his tablet. "It's not just this chamber," he said, his voice strained. "My God, chambers 7 and 12 are also showing manual overrides within the last hour. Multiple seals breached." Evelyn felt a cold dread. This was far bigger than she had realized. Chamber 7 holds the Georgian silver collection, Leo Vance stammered, paling. And Chamber 12, the Victorian ceremonial pieces. This wasn't a simple theft. It was an organized ransacking of the nation's history. Camilla's composure was fracturing. "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted, her voice rising. "I was simply retrieving items that belong to me. From 3 separate, maximum security vaults, Your Majesty?" Dr. Thorne asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "That would require override codes known only to a handful of people." Before anyone could respond, a new sound silenced them all. A single set of footsteps, measured and authoritative. The kind that needed no announcement. Every person in the room, guard, curator, and consort alike, straightened unconsciously. King Charles III appeared in the doorway. He was alone, dressed in a simple dinner jacket, but he filled the space with an absolute, undeniable authority. His eyes methodically swept the room, missing nothing. He looked at the open cases, at the faces of the archivists, at the leather bag in his wife's hands, and finally, his gaze settled on Sergeant Evelyn Reed. "Sergeant," he said. The single word was not a question, but an invitation to report. "Your Majesty," Evelyn replied, her voice steady. "Security breach triggered. Unauthorized access to Vault Chamber 9 and others. Attempted removal of protected items." Charles turned to his wife. There was no anger in his expression, only a profound, soul-deep weariness. "Camilla, this has been blown entirely out of proportion." "Charles," she began, defiance in her voice. "Your mother promised these pieces to me. Were those promises documented?" The king asked quietly. "They were private conversations," she said, her voice faltering slightly. "So no," he stated, not as a question, but as a conclusion. He looked back at Evelyn. He didn't issue an order. He didn't need to. He simply gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was an acknowledgement of duty, a transfer of authority. Evelyn stepped forward, her hands extended, palms up. A gesture of quiet, irrefutable power. "The bag, please, ma'am." For a heart-stopping moment, Camilla just stared, her face a war of disbelief and fury. She looked from Evelyn to her husband, searching his face for a reprieve she knew would not come. With a movement that seemed to cost her everything, she surrendered the leather satchel, handing her prize not to the king, but to the guard who had refused to yield. Evelyn took the bag, her touch firm and immediate. From her belt, she produced a security seal and locked the bag with a decisive click. "Custody transferred," she announced to Dr. Thorne, "to be returned to display following preservation protocols." When it was done, the king spoke again, his voice devoid of emotion. "Sergeant, please escort Her Majesty back to the main residence." The walk through Windsor's corridors was a silent ordeal. Evelyn maintained her position, a professional but unbreachable distance. Near the archway separating the archive wing from the private residence, Camilla finally spoke, her voice a low hiss. "You have no idea what you've done." Evelyn stopped and turned to face her for the first time. "I have upheld my oath, ma'am. You have weakened the monarchy for the sake of sentiment." "No, ma'am," Evelyn replied, her voice clear and strong in the echoing hall. "I have strengthened it by refusing to let it be plundered." She then escorted Camilla to the threshold and watched as she crossed back into her world. Evelyn returned to Vault 9. The experts were carefully restoring each piece. As the Starlight Tiara was placed back in its case, Evelyn saw something she'd missed before. A small, handwritten placard by the late queen. It read simply, "For the nation's keeping." Her duty was done. The legacy was safe. What happened in that vault wasn't just about stopping a theft. It was about defining the purpose of a crown in a world that has outgrown kings and queens. It's a powerful reminder that true legacy isn't forged in gold or diamonds, but in character, integrity, and the unwavering courage to uphold a promise. The real crown jewels, it turns out, are principles. Have you ever seen someone in a position of power bend the rules for their own personal gain? What would you have done if you were in Sergeant Reed's shoes, facing down that kind of authority? And here's a bigger question. Do you think true loyalty means protecting an institution's ideals, even if it means defying its leaders? If this story reminded you that integrity is the ultimate authority, hit that like button right now and subscribe for more stories where duty is put to the ultimate test. Share this with someone who believes that one person standing for what's right can make all the difference. We read every single comment. More stories about epic confrontations are waiting for you on your screen. Watch those next, and we'll see you tomorrow with another incredible story of protocol under pressure. Thanks for watching.